Hi everyone, my name is Irina. I'm extremely grateful for the chance to talk to you all today. I'm extremely excited to be here in this incredible group of people. And my talk today will be focusing on one particular thing. But let me start with something else. Okay. I remember JJ had problems with the clicker as well. Yeah, it worked. Let's take a look at this chart first. So this is monthly downloads of a pretty popular front-end tool in React. This is the blue line, monthly downloads on NPM. So what is the red line? Something sort of higher, larger than React. Yeah, I wonder what you think. Yeah, we have the right answer. This is PostCSS. This is PostCSS, shameless brag, built by evil Martians. And PostCSS became an incredibly prominent technology in the world of web development. So I hope I got your attention. Now let's think about this. How did this happen? How did PostCSS, something built by, essentially one person within our organization, small company, how did this tool become so popular? And yeah, it was a visionary product, absolutely. So the idea was, let's imagine the CSS of the future and let's give access to it today. And then the robots will do the conversion into whatever CSS browsers can use today. It was a lot of hard work of the author, Andrei Sitnik, our head of frontend. Hey, Andrei. Yeah, but it was also this collaboration between Andrei and evil Martians. If you think about this, evil Martians helped guide this product, helped support its development, but also PostCSS brought us consulting business because people trust us for building PostCSS. Probably we're not like the worst engineers in the world if you're able to pull this off. And also PostCSS helped us hire our front-end team, which was super important for us. Now, this is just a bit of context, a bit more context about Evil Martians. We are a DevTools consulting company. We work for amazing companies like Teleport, Iterative, HTTPie, and others. But more than that, sorry guys, more than that, we build internal commercial open source startups inside Evil Martians. So we launch products inside Evil Martians. Evil Martians becomes the first investor, and they grow and grow and become successful commercial open source companies. So two examples are Image Proxy and Anycable. So if you think about this, my life is surrounded by authors of open source. My life is like full of them. Like I have my colleagues building open source, not just PostCSS, many more open source projects are built by evil Martians. We do this like every single day, essentially. My clients, people I help, are also building developer-facing products, many of them building in open source. I'm also a co-founder of Anycable. And finally, in the community, people reach out to us for guidance and support in commercializing their open source projects. But the perspective is this. These are the authors of open source, the technical founders that reach out for this guidance. So this is my angle. So my mission is to, help make those people successful. I want to make authors of open source successful in life, not to have the sort of miserable life relying on donations, but to, but to be able to build a business, become sustainable, become successful, and grow. There is one particular problem in the business of open source that I'm noticing that I want to focus on today. I only have 15 minutes left, so let me just focus on this, the biggest problem, the most maybe fundamental problem in this business. So, do you think it's technical? Of course not, right? Not the biggest problems are not technical problems. Do you think it's maybe limitations of the model? Because we have to have open source, we have to have the business, so it's hard to, it's challenging even to sell to engineers, it's challenging when you have sort of cannibalization by the free product, all of that. Still, this is not the biggest problem that we see. The biggest problem is, the biggest problem. What's the biggest problem? Humans are the biggest problem. Humans are always the source of, well, challenge and opportunity, but humans are always in the center of the hardest problems. And in this case, this is not just humans, but human relationships. And not just human relationships, but the collision between different worldviews. So the business of open source, even the phrase, the business of open source, already contains the core conflict. And the core conflict is the conflict between two worldviews, the open source free software and commercialization, commercial business. And we see that, we can think of that as thank you. So we can think of that as the conflict between two people, two personalities. It's just an illustration, really. It doesn't have to be those two people. But pretty often, these are two founders of commercial open source business, the hacker and the hustler. And if you think about GitLab, Seed, and Mitro, they are the hustler and the hacker, respectively. And pretty often in those types of businesses, we see those two people, like the business founder and the technical founder. So let me talk about them for a second. Think about the hacker. Who the hacker is. The hacker is the original author of the open source. Maybe one of the maintainers, maybe the original author of the open source that now the team is looking to commercialize and grow into business. They are biased to build. This means when they have an idea of building something, they jump straight into building it. There's like zero delay between the thought and building. Pretty often, this person is also a star in a tech community. Maybe it's a star in a small community, but they are pretty well recognized and trusted for their open source work. And this is an important feature. Now, let's think about their challenges and the challenges they have to overcome in order to build a successful business that can grow and make their open source work sustainable. I know people will often not admit it, especially in front of VCs or in front of media, people will not admit it, but for a true hacker who's truly committed to building an open source, selling feels like a betrayal. And this is an important feature of their worldview, because in the worldview of open source, software should be available for free. So this is a big blocker for many early stage startups. Now, the solution here is for the hacker to see, to understand that any purchase is a win-win. It's a good thing to exist in the world. Unless we are a monopoly, and it's hard to become a monopoly, and it's hard to become a monopoly in open source. If you think about it, open source protects the market from monopolies. Now, unless you're a monopoly, the fact that you're selling software and people are buying it for money is a good thing in the world. It's a good thing. It's a good thing for both sides. And every time you purchase something, you actually benefit from it. Now, this is a big sort of internal change that has to happen for the hacker. The second one, the big one, I call it maintainer's bias. So think for a second. The author of open source mostly communicates with a specific subset of users of open source. Those are the people who are willing to open an issue or submit or send a pull request or ask a question. They are a very specific subset of all users of open source. They are very unique and specific, and they have specific characteristics. They want to learn about your product. They are interested in reading difficult, complex documentation. They're interested in reading your code. And the maintainer's bias is inevitably assuming that your paying customers that come from the same cohort of open source users, that they are similar to those contributors. And they're not. The paying customers are a completely different subset of open source users. They're completely different. It almost requires the author of open source to meet their audience again, meet new people to overcome this bias. Paying customers, people who pay for commercial product, are completely different. And it's important to understand that they are only focused on the problem they're trying to solve or the goal they have to achieve. They're not looking to learn about the product, the code base, largely. And this is a big thing. Finally, the author of open source is also driven by his or her personal vision for the project. That's often the case. And it sounds great, right? It's great to have a vision, absolutely. But now that you have a business, and you're not alone in this business, you have to learn to make decisions that are aligned with business goals. And one example is, I see many maintainers and authors of open source spend outsized amount of time and resources on supporting users of open source without limiting this activity to certain boundaries. Because you want to be able to support users of open source. You want to be able to, contribute and keep building. But it has to also, take into account other priorities, let's say. There are also other priorities in business. And this is a kind of hard, tough decision for the hacker to make. And finally, because hacker is is a star, is trusted by everyone, sometimes it's hard for them to trust and let go, especially to trust the business partner and to let go of product priorities. And the solution is to trust your business partner. This is hard. Today I just want you to admit that this is a hard problem to solve, but it has to be solved. Now, the hustler. This is the person who is biased to action. They want to build an organization. This is the person who is truly motivated in building the organization and building the business. And they sometimes are the only person who feels the urgency to sell in this couple. Now, their challenges. It's not often always the case, but at least in my experience, what I see, this business partner, this hustler within this pair, is struggling with imposter syndrome, as well as all of us, right, to some extent, for sure. But their imposter syndrome is not allowing them to influence the product. And this is a huge obstacle, a huge obstacle. So what they have to do, which sounds like super, sometimes for them it sounds awful, because they think they just have to sell. But you actually cannot sell if you cannot influence product priorities. You have to influence product priorities in order to efficiently sell. That's sort of kind of obvious, but there is a path that I'm noticing that people have to take to get there, to be able to influence product decisions. This person also feels alien to open source community, and they sometimes want to stay away from an open source community. They think that open source community is something else, just for hackers and all. This is wrong. This is wrong. This person has to become a valuable part of open source community and tech community overall. And this is actually what I'm doing as part of my work, like becoming a member of tech community while not being a hacker myself. Finally, this mistake is something that actually many unexperienced entrepreneurs are doing. They try to dictate timelines in product development while they shouldn't do this. So like I said, they have to influence product decisions, but they cannot dictate timelines because they have to trust the tech team to deliver when possible. We have to trust the timelines of the team. So you have to trust the hacker with this. Now, we went through this personally with Anycable. So Anycable is a real-time server, an open source alternative to Ably, Pusher, Twilio, Live blocks, things like that. And there's open source version and a pro version, so it's an open core type of product. So the person on the left, Vladimir Dementiev, is definitely a star in the Ruby community. This is his GitHub, and he's the original author of Anycable. And I act as a hustler in this couple. Now, as a result of our attempts to converge our worldviews and our perspectives on business and open source, as a result of this, here's what we got. We simplified Anycable's deploy and infrastructure dramatically. So we used to have 2 applications that people had to run to use Anycable. Now it's just 1 application. And it took me, a lot, so I had to kind of write a whole case for that and explain the types of users, the types of applications that would benefit from this simplification, even though they lose some of the efficiency, some of the productivity. But now this simplified version allows us to move forward much faster. And when people need additional performance, they can return to the sort of more complex in architecture. We started building completely different documentation, because documentation for paid customers is just a different world. It's a completely different type of content versus documentation for open source users. And we call them guides, and we also do demos. So a guide has the customer problem as its title, or customer goal as its title. And there can be sort of repeating guides, and it's okay, because the closer the guide is, and its title actually, to the problem people want to solve, the better chance that they will find it and they'll be able to use it. And it also doesn't have any details about the product and how it's built. The third thing is that we started charging companies, organizations, especially larger organizations, for custom features and consulting, because we just do this. This is a funny phrase you could use. You should say, when an organization is reaching out and asking if we can add a new feature, we just say, would you be willing to commercially support development of this feature that will end up in our open source version or our pro version? And most of them say yes. And it helped make development of Cable more sustainable. And finally, we entered a new market because it makes sense as a business. We now have Cable for Node.js application and Next.js serverless JavaScript applications. So this is just an example of the split between our responsibilities. And like I said, I'm a big believer that the hustler should be in charge of product priorities while not dictating the timelines, the deadlines for delivery. So they should they should supply the priorities that will help sales, but they cannot try to control the timelines. And now there are other parts of the work, and this is just an example of how we split it. Having said that, I want to say my impression is that the best early stage DevTools founder is the one who embraces both worldviews in one personality, in one person. So it can sound a little sort of psychotraining, like psychic, but if you can internalize this conflict, if you can fully embrace both worldviews, that yes, there's open source and there's definitely, it's an important worldview, it's important, it's paramount for technology, maybe for humanity to have open source and to have open source collaboration. But at the same time, embrace the fact that there has to be a business to support this open source, to make it sustainable. And finally, I want to say that many of the founders I've met are just this, look like they embrace both sides. Both founders of Supabase, I think, embrace both kind of personalities or worldviews. Nikita from Neon, who's speaking right now at this other stage, he's also embracing both hackers' mentality and hustlers' mentality. And finally, one of our clients, I learned they did this. They swapped roles for a certain period of time. So the CTO became the CEO and vice versa because, well, they wanted to find a way of understanding each other's worldviews and understanding each other's priorities from this closer perspective. So once you have this, once you have those two mentalities and worldviews melting into each other, you have precision and velocity to grow the business of open source. So this is what I wanted to share today. You can follow me on Twitter, send me a message. And finally, I actually have much more to share. So this was just one particular problem I wanted to talk to you today. Not technical, purely, you could say, philosophical, psychological. But there's much more to share. And if you use this QR code and sign up to a newsletter, I'll be sharing more in the form of letters. So, and I hope to support many more authors of open source and entrepreneurs in the business of open source in successfully and quickly moving from pre-seed to Series B and beyond, and growing beyond that. Thank you. I think we still have time for questions. So, folks, if you have any questions about any of that, I'm happy to answer. Hey.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. And usually, like working on open source and also taking care of the business, usually takes separate efforts, right? So how important it is for a company or an early stage company to align those efforts into something more like that converges in order to like doing two separate things, and what are the tips that you can share in order to achieve that, like that convergence into those efforts?
Thank you. That's a great question. So yeah, the first tip. So I believe it's super important for early stage open source business to have the founding team aligned on their goals. I mean, it's not that you can have one founder focusing on open source and the other founder focusing on business. It's just not going to work. I just saw many businesses stalling and not being able to iterate quickly and move quickly and grow because of that. Because essentially, two founders are not aligned on what they want to sell, and that even that selling it is a good thing, you know? So the first tip is to this kind of admitting that they have different worldviews, admitting that, and then trying to converge. And it's important for, like I hope some of the hackers would, you know, start listening to hustlers and vice versa, right? But the other tip is we shouldn't think of this we should think of the business of open source as the ultimate solution for open source to be sustainable. So our goal is definitely to continue building in open source and understanding that whatever we build in open source is it's not gonna, you know, belong to us, right? We build it, we put it out there, and it's available for everyone. Let's like be super conscious about that. But but then on top of that, let's find together as hacker and hustler, let's find a way to, with the limited resources that we have, let's find a way of building out a business and iterating on the business component of that. So the way it works for us, for example, is right now we've already been investing in open source. So this is where things start. And this is, for example, when internally we have some ideas at Evil Martians, we start with open source. We start with open source with building the product, looking at the traction, not thinking about commercialization, just kind of starting with open source. And once it's out there and growing, and you can see people using it, and you can see maybe organizations using it in production and all, you know, kind of, you can see value creation, then my approach is to dedicate a certain amount of time, maybe 3 months, to test out some commercialization hypothesis. But you sort of switch. You start with open source, then you test a commercialization hypothesis, and hopefully once you've found something that works, you can also dedicate some time to continue building out the open source product, because you need this product. You need open source product to build out the commercial version, because it drives adoption, it drives, maybe it's marketing for you, but it drives the business forward. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, and a side note, I love the work that you're doing with fonts. Thank you for sharing those. I love them, so yeah.
That's so nice. Yeah, we have, I'm using Martian Grotesque. I was using Martian Grotesque in my presentation, and we have Martian Mona on Google Fonts, and it's open source font for your IDs. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Hi. I don't want to ask anything. I just want to thank you for the presentation. It was great. And as a technical founder, being a bit in the position of the hacker, I definitely see like the evolution into like a hustler a bit. So yeah, thank you for that. Good work.
Thank you, Didier. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to your talk. All right, thank you. Thanks, guys.